Today we're gonna start with the Kioptrix level 3. So this is third machine of the series. Over here we're gonna use the IP address which is 192.168.0.109, and we have a web interface over here. So we can see over here Craw Security. So the main objective of this machine to find the vulnerabilities on the server side, as we have done the previous things. So if you see over here, we have some messages over here from Craw Security. We have some messages like our website for a new release of our gallery CMS. So we have a CMS. So if I talk about the CMS, CMS stands for Content Management System. If you try to see on the google.com, if you write CMS, you can see over here Content Management System is a software application that can be used to manage the creation and modification of digital contents on the server side. So CMS, like if I talk about the CMS could be your WordPress, could be your Drupal, it could be anything. That application that helps for maintaining the website. So lots of the pen testers, they simply look for the CMS, and the best CMS is called WordPress. Most of the websites are developed in WordPress, so we can find the loopholes on the server side, and there are many more things. So over here, if you find the CMS vulnerability, if you write the vulnerabilities of CMS, you can find the CMS scanners from GitHub, lots of tools. You can try to get the scanner for Kali or Linux. So if you search for the CMS vulnerabilities are the most common vulnerabilities. A vulnerability has been discovered in the WordPress content management system. You can see it's a WordPress, which could allow an SQL injection. Successful exploitation of this issue could allow an attacker to compromise the application across modified data or exploit talents and vulnerabilities in the underlying database. So there are many things we can try to manipulate. But the content management system is a more important part. For example, we can see that they have, in this message, they have delivered a new gallery CMS on their security. We are so full of ourselves, we put in our own dev server. Okay, over here we have some words like dev server. Dev servers are basically your development servers. When the website is under construction or it's on developing mode, so there would be a name called dev server, just to show the CSVR. Visit our blog section for more information of our new gallery CMS, or cut to the chase, you can see over here. So if I simply go over here, Galerific, say we can see this machine is on developing mode, so that's why it's showing us like this. There's no proper view of this server. But wait a minute. Remember, when you are simply pen testing a machine in your local network, you have to do some changes in your etc host. And this machine of Kioptrix has some thing to add. So if I go to the Apache OSCP VMs, so this was the third machine over here. So let's select this one. And over here, if you go down, a little bit of down, you'll see some important things. So things with the challenge. Once you find the IP address, edit your host files and point it to the domain called DNS called Kioptrix.3. It's saying in the Windows directory, Windows System 32 drivers etc host. So etc host is a directory where you can simply host any server in your local network. So we're going to copy the DNS name, and over here, nano etc host. So I can see over here it has a local IP address which is this. So we're going to add our machine IP address, which is 192.168.0.9, and the DNS name was Kioptrix. Sorry, the DNS name was Kioptrix3.com. So we need to save the domain name in our local network, so we can simply use it for our in local environment. So Control X, Y, yes. So when you refresh the page, if you see over here, when I refresh the page, okay, wait, something get happened. Control X, Y. I see now. Okay, so there's again some problem. Now you can see it's working fine. So this was not working. So we can see 109 was a gallery department over there. So we can run the server in the local network. So we can see the proper content over here. So our main objective that CMS vulnerabilities could be anything. If you search for the CMS vulnerabilities, the main objective that they have given CMS. So if I write vulnerabilities, you can see there are lots of scanners. You can simply go for the Kali Linux. CMS map is a Python open source. You can see there are lots of other things we can use it. So this is a Python file, and because CMS is the Python open source scanner that automates the process to identify security flow of the most popular CMS. The main purpose of the CMS map is to integrate common vulnerabilities of different types of CMSs in a single tool. So we can see there's a lots of things we can use it for. But before that, we're going to try the manual approach. So if you simply visit the blog section, you will see, okay, let's do multiple slash. So over here we have some blogs. So new gallery online, we have just implemented our sites of art gallery. Okay, so secure, we are putting our production server hosting on this gallery application will be available for purchase. This is a normal thing. And further, do check for you can simply visit the website to get the gallery department, as we have mentioned over here. So over here we can see they have given some new thing, which is your new lead programmer. So this is a normal thing. It's all about information gathering. Some of the people, they put their names on the website. For example, we have a message like, we have just hired a great new lead programmer. He's 13 years old. It's a normal thing. He's a wizard that's comes with coding. So welcome Lone Ferret. So Lone Ferret over here is just a normal user. It could be anything. It's just a name over here, so it could be a user, it could be anything on the server side. So the main objective, let's move it, and we can see over here we have Craw Security, we have a username and a password. And see over here, the CMS which we were talking about was Lotus CMS. The Lotus CMS. So if you search for the Lotus CMS vulnerabilities, the main objective of the Lotus CMS. Lotus CMS. So if I simply write the Lotus CMS and they are showing me some vulnerabilities over there, lots of code, remote code execution attacks, some GitHub scripts, some remote code execution, and some PHP. So this is a normal file of the Lotus CMS and showing something like main page or some admin pages. So before attacking phase, we have to gather the information about the target. This is the most important part. So if we simply enumerate the server, let's talk about Nmap. So in this case, we can do some Nmap scanning part on the server. So I'm going to use SS and SV. That's enough for me, I guess. Or in the side-by-side, we can use some Nikto also, and Nikto is one of the best tools for identifying. You can use any of the other scanners. So as we can see that it showed us Phpmyadmin Changelog.php. So Phpmyadmin is only managing MySQL databases and should be protected for limited authorized host. And we can see we find a Phpmyadmin directory over there. So there are many more other things we can find, but we can see the port number 22 and port number 80 is only available on the server side. So OpenSSH 4.7 and Apache HTTP 2.2.8. So we don't have the username, so we don't have the credentials to simply access to the SSH server. And we have the port 80, and that's it, and the PHP version. So there's a PHP management running on the server side, and we can see we have a Phpmyadmin page. So if I copy this one, and let's try to access any of the server. So 109, so the IP address, and let's do a / and a PHP. Okay, so over here we are not able to access the Phpmyadmin. So can we access this one? Yes, we can access the Phpmyadmin changelog. So what the changelogs means over here? So it's something, a log fixing something like. A normal thing over here. So what we can do, we can try to look for something else. So let's try the directory crawling. So I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to copy the URL, and over here we're going to use the rest. So I'm going to paste the URL over here. We're going to use number of threads according to the server side, and we're going to simply put a okay. Okay. So we were doing the Kioptrix third machine. So we are already running a Durbuster scan on the server side to identify the directories. So in this case, we're going to use the word list. So I'm going to use user share. We're going to go to the word list directory, and I'm going to use Durbuster and any of the directory which I want. So I'm going to use the medium one. So we go to the recursive, and we can see we're going to use the PHP file. Why I'm using the PHP file? Because if you see over here in the webalizer, it's showing it's setting a PHP, an Apache server with the Ubuntu server and the jQuery is over there. So we can use JSP also. So in this scenario, let's start and enumerate the number of directories on the server side. So the extension will be .php, and we can see the directories on the server side. There are lots of files and directories, and let's see the tree module, and we can see in lots of other content on the server. So we have a Phpmyadmin, a cache, a style, a core, the data, which is a gallery, and the modules. We have backup logs. There's a lot of things. So we're gonna simply check for the my Phpmyadmin. So I can see over here, when I simply visit the Phpmyadmin, I can simply get the login access. And according to the NICTO, Phpmyadmin is for managing MySQL database, should be created for limited authorized host. So we can say that in this server, there's a MySQL server might be running in the backend. So we can see the username and password over here. So let's try the default credentials to bypass the username and password. So I'm going to use admin and the password. So it was not working. It was error. So let's try admin. Again, there's no enable. So we can use admin password blank. So admin password blank is the most common default credentials in nowadays, and we can see that we have access to the Phpmyadmin directory. And over here we can see the MySQL version is this, and the server Ubuntu plus the Unix operating system with the username admin and localhost. So there are lots of things we can perform over here. There are many things, but if you see over here, we only can see the characters. We are not able to jump the database. So this Phpmyadmin only contains the information schema. And information schema is the architecture of your MySQL database. There will be nothing more than design or the variables or characters of the MySQLs. If you have the username or the password, you can simply access to the database and you can enumerate users on the file system. And you can try many more other things. So let's try something else to find. As we can see that there might be some MySQL database server on the server side. Let's try to manipulate this. So over here, let's try the authentication bypass. If you can see, we can bypass this one. And remember, we have Lotus CMS also. So I'm going to use this SQL authentication bypass cheat sheet. So going to the pentest log. So we can use one-on-one query to bypass the login forms. For that case, let's try one-on-one query. Single quote or function 1 is equal to 1 minus minus space. Let's try copy and save. So we can see that we don't have a login form. We don't have an access because I tried the one-on-one query. Sometimes they filter the query, so we can use it. We can use double pipe or single pipe for web bypass. This one is not also working. Let's try again with single pipe. Over here, this one is not working.
Just remove the space from minus minus, just before minus minus.
Okay, yeah, before minus. Nope. Let's try this one also. So it's not working either. None of the commands are working. But if you search for the Lotus CMS vulnerability, let's search in the local database. So search exploit Lotus CMS. And you can see there's a command called remote code execution. And there are multi vulnerabilities also. So we have remote code execution on Lotus CMS. I simply search for the Lotus CMS and I doesn't know the vulnerability and doesn't know the version, which version they are using. So all we can try is, we are not going to use Metasploit because it will be give us a direct shell on the server. We're going to use it on later part, but this is all manual pen testing. So I'm going to use this part to identify some loopholes on the server side. So I know my main objective was I know that there is a MySQL database is running in the server side. So I'm going to look for some vulnerabilities over here. I'm going to look for the parameter values. So we can see galb.php5. It's a normal thing. This is a normal data, but there is no parameter value. They are simply executing the file on the server side. So let's try to check. So this is home directory and recent directory. Okay, this is a recent directory and home directory. See how we are doing in this news. This is a collection of wild picture, good times, and make. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, we have a sorting option over here. So they're showing us the photo ID, file names, file size, data upload, and view. So let's use photo ID. Okay. So in the photo ID, I can see they have some parameter values. For example, gallery.php.id is equal to 1 plus short the photo ID is equal to photos. So I think we have done a simple syntax about like let's use Nmap. So over here, I'm going to copy this one and I'm going to paste it over here the URL. Why I'm just pasting the URL? Because I'm going to show you how does it look like. So domain name, should I file type dot programming language question mark parameter is equal to. So if I simply compare this one, this is a proper way to identify any vulnerabilities on the server side. All you have to do is to simple examine your entire parameter values from the server. So the main objective, for if I talk about the main objective, look, the domain name is Kioptrix.com. This would be our directory on the server side. The gallery.php is your file type. ID is the parameter with the value 1. So whenever you see a parameter value from the server side, you can try to manipulate according to the OWASP top 10. Because OWASP top 10 with the top 10 critical vulnerabilities are the important parts. Either you can use the OWASP top 10, either you can use the NIST methodology, the networking part. So over here, I'm going to try to check the exception handling, error handling from the server side. So I can see the parameter value, which is ID is equal to 1, and I can try a backslash. And let's execute this one. So when I simply execute a backslash on the server side, I can see something error like you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual corresponding to MySQL server version for the right syntax to near slash. So we have an error on the server. So what we can try. So this parameter value is not proper sanitized from the server side, and the data ID is equal to 1 is fetching from the database server. It could be anything. It could be item, it could be photos, it could be anything from the database side, and we can see that database side is reflecting on our URL section. So what I'm going to try to check with the help of SQL map to enumerate the servers. So let's use SQL map. So SQL map. So we know the automation part. So SQL map is one of the best tools for finding SQL ingestions to enumerate the database services. So over here, we're gonna use -u for the URL section. We're gonna use some enumeration techniques to identify on the server side. So we're gonna use -, tables, -columns to enumerate table names or column names from the database, and we're gonna use -d, -t, -c for using a specific database server. And through SQL ingestion, you can also use it for OS shell. You can simply put a shell on the server side to get an access of that database. There are many more things you can perform with SQL injection. So let's try with the SQL map. So -u for the URL, and I'm going to put with the ID is equal to 1. So our main objective will be identifying the database service from the database query. So I'm going to use -dbs, which is your database to enumerate. So it looks like the backend database is MySQL. Yes, we would like to tailor specific for the DMS. Yes, why not? For the DMS test, we want to include all the tests for MySQL, level 1, risk, level 1. So yes, for more advanced scan. So it's going to try all the possibilities of your SQL injection one by one in the manual and his automation bit. So all we have to simply wait over here to find. So get parameter ID is 4.1 and error based we are having a clause flow. So get ID is vulnerable over here. So you want to test for further. I say yeah, no. And we can see some gallery information schema or MySQL. So there was a database server with the using this parameter value. I'm going to use the capital D to identify the data. I'm going to use a capital D to use a specific database. So I'm going to use gallery. And I'm going to use the gallery database to enumerate some tables. So as per the options, I'm going to use -tables to enumerate. -dbs to database enumerate and -tables to tables to enumerate. So hit enter, and you will see some table names from the server side. So fetching the table database call gallery, SQL return some 7 entries, dev accounts, gallery comments, photo ID settings, users. So this is dev account. Why I'm selecting the dev account? Because if you see over here, this was a dev server, a development server. So we can use it for development of accounts. So I'm going to use a capital T to enumerate the table names of dev accounts, and I'm going to use columns to enumerate. And we can see some columns like ID, password, username. So I'm going to use capital C. I'm going to put username, comma, password. So I'm going to fetch the column names like username and password from the table names, dev accounts. So we're going to use -dump function. Dump function is basically used to dump all the data on the specific table names. So hit enter. Do you want to store some hashes of empty files? So it finds some hashes on the server side. So it's asking me, do you want to store some hashes temporary with the further processor with the tools? I said no. Do you want to crack them via dictionary-based attack? So over here, dictionary-based attack is to crack the hashes. A brute force attack and a dictionary attack is totally different in real life scenarios. A dictionary attack is basically used to crack the hash formats with a bunch of words on the server. So we're going to use yes. And it's asking me some 1, 2, 3 option with the default file dictionary for the custom file dictionary. So I'm going to use the default one, which is 1. And do you want to use a common password suffix? I said no. So it's going to try all the possibilities on the server side to break the passwords. So over here, we can see the user drag and user loaner parent over there on the server side. And they are the password, master and star. So SQL injection is to basically enumerate the database services on the backend server. So we have a proper username and password now as per the data. So we can see that the port 22 was open. If I'm an attacker, if I have the username and password, the next step will be to get an access on the server side with the user credentials. So I can use the SSH protocol to communicate with that one. So we can use SSH. So I'm going to take the first user, which is drag, and the password master to communicate. So let's use drag @ the IP address. So authentication host can be established. So yes, password master. We are on the server side. So pwd. So on the user drag directory, let's do sudo -l to check the permission of drag. So we can see when I write sudo-l is used to check the sudo permissions on the specific user on the server side. So it's sorry, user drag may not run sudo on Kioptrix level 3. So there are some post exploitation part. So let's jump to the root directory. So we have a R bash. So over here we can see that there is an R before the bash. So what does it R means? So if I go to the etc password directory, I can see the user drag has R bash, which is restricted. It means I don't have the permission to jump any directories on the server side. If I simply go over here, if I write R bash is an alternative to protect accounts, a restriction I can say. So this works much better than Audit. It works by dissolving a number of shell features. For example, when assigned R bash of the shell, your user cannot change their path environment variables. Okay, this is the important part. You cannot even change the directories with the cd command. So that's why we don't have the permission to change the directories, because we have R bash permissions. So what I can try, that I already have a one user which is called Lonefaret. Let's try to jump this one, the Star Wars. So why I'm just calling this one, because Lonefaret has a bash terminal. So we're gonna use su Lonefaret with the password Star Wars, and you can see we have jumped to user Lonefaret. So I'm gonna use sudo-l. Okay, so can we jump to the root directory? Yes, we can jump to the root directory, because we are not a restriction shell as per the data. Okay, let's remove the color bits from this. So I'm going to use export term is equal to xterm to remove the color bits. Yes. So I'm going to go to the home directory first for post exploitation part. So let's go to the Lonefaret directory. And over here in the Lonefaret directory, the most important thing when you have a user, first check their R bash history. That's the most important part. If you can find some relevant data. So over here, it's right sudo ht exit clear cd / there are some commands on the backend, the server side. Okay, he did the company policy. So what is the company policy over here? Let's see over here. So we have a message from the company employer. So hello, new employee. It's an application process here to use our newly installed software for editing, creating, and viewing files. Okay. Please use the command sudo ht. Failure to do will result in immediate termination. Okay, they simply had implement a new application on their server side, which is for editing, creating, and viewing files. And they are saying, please use the ht command. Okay, let's do sudo ht. And we can see that we have jumped to the environment. So this was an application for creating, viewing, and editing the files. But before that, let's use, okay, we can access the files. So I'm going to write open file. Let's try open files. And over here, if I see that I can check all the files one by one. So over here, we can see we have some files like history, sudo files. Okay, can we jump to the sudo files? Yes, we can jump to the sudo files. And why this is happening? Sudo files only can be accessible by the user root. and sudo file contains all the user permissions. For example, why? Because if you see to the payatu.com, let's try to open the payatu.com. Got milk and payatu. So over here, application, let's see this one. What services are running, which service has the user privileges. And over here on the Payatu, I'm going to look for the vulnerabilities like exploiting services which is running as root. This is the famous eternal blue and SMB cry exploited by SMB services, which is generally run as a root. With an example, an attacker can remote code execution and local privilege escalation as well. So some of the applications they might be running as root, and they have some permission also by the local users, so they can use it for privilege escalation part. For example, if you use netstat antup, it shows you all the ports which are open and listing. We can use for check services which is running as locally if they have exploited or not. So let's try this one. I can see over here that in the local base there is running a MySQL database server, and they have a 22 port of SSH connection. So I'm going to use process aux grep root. So through the PS option, I'm gonna fetch the files which is running as root. So if I hit enter, I can see all the files which is running as root servers. So over here, if you check each and every services which is running can be accessible by the root permission. So MySQL parameter, applications can be also accessed. But the application sudo ht, which is also user, can be accessed to that. So if I simply do sudo ht, if I write open, I can shoot. If I'm attacker, if this application is running with root privileges, if a local user also has a permission to access those files, so he can simply use etc sudo files to edit. And over here, you can see the root user has all the permissions, and the low-nefarious user, which has the permission of user bin su, and it has a user bin ht function also. So over here they say sudo means super user to use the ht files. So ht files is running as super user. So I simply use bin sh file. I did bin sh. Bin sh over here is basically will run the server by the local privileges, the root privileges. You can simply write all functions just like over here. It will make a low-nefarious super user. Or otherwise you can write bin sh to simply use a specific server side. For example, if I simply use sudo bin sh file, which is will run by the directly from the shell execution part, directly from the server side, and you can see I have root over there. If I write who am I can see root. And why this happened? Because the application was running as root server, and a local user can access that one. So a local user can simply get those files and do some changes according to the data. That's why the most important part is your Payatu, the application exploiting services which is running as root, and to check how does it works. So if I talk about the mitigations, never ever give a permission to a local user with the sudo permissions. The command should be limited and command should be restricted.